We are with Simmone, who is a coach. She is a motivational speaker. She is a mentor. She is an author. I only have awesome people there, so she's just awesome. She is going to share her story of hope through shame, and we are so delighted to have her here. Welcome, Simmone.
Thank you, Dr. Gia. It's good to be here.
I'm so
kind of.
Yeah. No, I think you're good. So when you and I met before this, we were all over the place. You were sharing like your story. I love that you said, in some ways I have a little bit of a lifetime drama.
Yeah.
But what I love about the lifetime drama is that there is threads that bring it all together, and that you're so aware of the seasons. So I don't want to share your story. I want you to share your story. So go ahead.
Yeah, so that's my way of laughing through my story.
Yeah.
Is to say that I've been the heroine of my own Lifetime movie.
Uh-huh.
And it's felt like that.
Yeah.
And I said kind of good to be on the show because this is probably the most public forum that I've ever shared as much as I'm going to share. So
I'm
it's
honored.
a weird feeling.
I can imagine.
But I do realize, as I had shared with you, that the time has come, and it's been for a while, and I started to share snippets of it.
Mm-hmm.
But I really do believe that it's setting the stage for me to share more of it because I know that it's going to help a lot of people, both men and women. And the book.
Coming soon.
Exactly. It's called No More Tears.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really the story of my journey that I've been grappling with writing as well. So thank you for pushing me a little further along. This is just like confirmation
Good.
that I need to do it.
Good.
So my story starts off really with me as a little girl.
Mm-hmm.
And it's different from many stories that we typically hear
Mm-hmm.
because we always hear of people starting off with, abject poverty and all these disadvantaged circumstances.
Right.
Well, mine was kind of the opposite.
Okay.
So I started off in a home that was, actually would say affluent. I mean, like an upper middle class family. And so I went to a really good school.
Mm-hmm.
Went to church, and we did all of those things. It had two parents in the home, so everything was together. Right. And so it wasn't until I was about 6 years old that started to change.
Okay.
So leading up to that point, I had a great family life. I was the youngest of all of my siblings. So people would say, well, then you were spoiled and all that. And so I don't think I was spoiled, but I do believe that I was affirmed.
Okay.
And so I was, the pet of the family.
Yeah.
And so I really couldn't do anything wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And I was always supported and uplifted, and my gifts and everything were supported.
Right.
So it wasn't until around 6 years old that, as I mentioned to you, that changed.
Right.
And that is when I was molested
Mm-hmm.
by my sister's boyfriend at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't really understand what that was about.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know what that meant.
Mm-hmm.
And he threatened me and said that, if I told anyone that, I would be beat up and all this other stuff. And so, this was my first introduction really to secrecy.
Okay.
And holding things back and not telling.
Right.
And as I said before, I was so young and not exposed to that type of behavior or anything. I didn't really know what to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
So I never did tell anybody. And that went on for a few years.
Okay.
And so it wasn't until some other circumstances, and I went to the doctor, and Mom took me to the doctor, and she asked me for some reason if anyone tried to, well, as she termed it, pull my panties down.
Okay.
And so I was terrified, and I said, you know what, this is my opportunity to tell the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And I told her, and she was just shocked, and she went immediately to my sister, and she was shocked, and she said, well, why didn't you say anything? And I don't know.
About how old were you?
About that time I was 10.
Okay.
And so my mom and my sister had a meeting with him.
Mm-hmm.
And they called me into the meeting, and he of course denied it, and then I got hysterical, and I was like, I'm not lying, and so you know how that is. And really, after that, they sent me out of the room, and after that was really like the end of it, literally, where it wasn't talked about anymore. I never saw him again, but we never talked about it anymore. And I never realized, I don't think my father even knew I don't think my mom told him because I think he might have probably
Right.
wanted to kill that guy.
Wow.
So I think he died not knowing. And so what that did was it set up for me a couple of things. Because, as I said before, it introduced secrecy, which then led to the shame and hiding and feeling dirty and feeling you did something wrong and you're not knowing what. And then it also, I think, my mom acted in some ways as a hero in that for me in terms of fighting for me and believing what I told her and everything. But then not talking about it, I didn't realize how much that impacted me into my teen years and my adult life.
Okay.
It really introduced a sense of helplessness and powerlessness.
Okay.
And not having a voice, not being able to speak up for myself, not being able to say what I want or to say, well, I don't like this. And so it created for me a personal culture of just going along.
Right. Just
especially stay quiet and just go with whatever is happening, especially if it's from someone that's considered an authority figure.
Now, question. Did you try to bring it up, or was it one of those things where, cause we have the unspoken rules in our houses.
Right.
Was it just one of those things where you just never felt open to, or did you try and you got shut down?
I never tried.
Okay.
I mean, after that night, it never came up and I never brought it up and I never felt that I needed to.
Okay.
It was just a thing. And it was just something that happened.
And it's done.
And it's done, I thought.
Right.
And so coming out of that, the years after that were a bit uneventful, trying to just be a normal teenager and have those normal things going on.
Right.
And then when I was about 14 years old, again, this whole thing of being, I guess, targeted as a young girl happened again.
Okay.
With someone who had joined our church.
Okay.
And that turned into like a 20-year saga.
Okay.
In that time, again, more secrecy and shame because this person was married at the time and approached me and said, well, God said you're my wife.
At 14.
At 14.
Okay.
And so I'm thinking, how is that possible? But again, like I said, I'm just going with the flow of things because that's what you're supposed to do. And I think because I was brought up in an era too where, kids were seen and not heard.
Yes.
You just learned to be good.
Yes.
And good meant that you did what you were told. You spoke when you were spoken to and you did all the right things and you didn't dig any deeper.
Yeah.
And so I went along with that whole saga. I mean, and I'm obviously glossing over many details. But it turned out where he got divorced, married me, and we were married for almost 12 years. And it just was, we had our moments of good times, I guess you could say, for, what it was.
Right.
But it was a very, very unhealthy relationship.
What was the age difference?
He was 13 years older than I was.
Okay.
And he had children and all that sort of thing. So more, exposed than I was to life.
Right.
And
well, you were 14.
I was 14 and I never really dated.
Okay.
So for me, when you look at the 20-year span, that's from 14 to 34, all of the normal things that you would do to develop as a person, for me, I didn't have.
Wow.
And so I felt that gap, but it wasn't until after we got divorced.
Okay.
And I realized that I was now kind of restarting my life at 34 from 14.
Wow.
So it was, as I said before, a very unhealthy relationship. I think because of the age difference, it was more like a parent-child relationship, more so than a husband and wife relationship, because I didn't have, once again, a voice.
Okay.
I was not considered a partner. I was considered someone who was lower than and someone who should do as she was told and go with the flow, right? So the normal things that I remember when he started to build, I can't even say our home because again, it was more his home. And I was so excited and I was getting magazines and coming with all these ideas and this is what we could do and And all of that was shut down. It was more about, what he wanted and what he wanted done. I remember feeling very isolated in the relationship. Like in the 11 years that we were together, I think my family had probably been over once or twice.
Wow.
I always felt like I had to sneak to be around people like that, which is a normal thing. So I had to work my time around times when he wouldn't feel that I was taking away from his time to talk to family, visit with family, talk with friends. And so he used to go to work really early in the mornings. And so that would be my little window to call up my best friend or something and have our little chats and whatnot in the morning, where it was quote unquote safer.
Right. So very controlling.
Very controlling relationship.
Where do you see the shame come in that relationship?
Well, for me, it was the whole thing of being, I guess, an adulteress, because he was not divorced. And so he was, quote unquote, seeing me, and he was still married. And so for me, that was very shameful.
That's a heavy title for a teenager as well.
Exactly. And I remember on a couple of occasions I shared with a close friend of mine at school, and I was sharing with her, and she was like, that's crazy, you shouldn't be doing that. And I remember visiting a church, and I just felt really heavy. And I went up to the altar for prayers, and the counselor took me in the back, and I told her the whole thing, and she was like, this is nothing for a young girl to be involved with, and you need to get out of it right away. And I went back, of course, and told him, this is what the counselor said, that I need to be away from you. And of course he said, well, she just doesn't want us to be together. You can't listen to people like that. And, so it just went on and on like that. So every time when I tried to pull away, it was always either some, these people don't have your best interests at heart. I do. Or, he would hurt himself, or it would just be something that was really scary for me that made me feel like I'm not going to get away from this guy. It's safer that I just yield and just go with this flow.
So again, this settling, the not having a voice, but very interesting, unlike the first scenario at home where it was just ignored, this here was created and enforced through manipulation and control tactics and wow.
And so for me, my awareness started to increase when I got older, and I started to do again adulting things, and got a job, and so I would be around again a different mix of people. And so it exposed me to the things that were now I realize were unhealthy. And it wasn't out of anything deliberate. It was just out of normal, everyday conversations and people talking about their relationships and everything else. And it made me realize, this is a little off. So that was my first bit of awakening. And then when I changed churches and started really getting more teaching on and studying the Word and studying about vision and potential and purpose and leadership and all of that again just opened me up completely. And I started to think about me as a person, as an individual, and having a calling or having a purpose and having a greater meaning for my life. And that started to really cause problems at home.
So we stick a pin right there. We're going to take a break, and we're going to come back right where we left off.